Hi, good evening, class. How's everyone doing this evening? Where's my chat? Here we go. Hi, Mel. Good evening, Emily. How are you? Happy Wednesday, Christina. How is everyone doing this evening? We made it through another week. We're gaining some momentum here. Doing good, Celeste. How are you? Hi, Brandon. Welcome. Welcome to Unit 7. Cherie, hi, how are you? Yay, we made it, right? Gaining momentum now. And then by the time you know it, it's going to be Unit 10. We're like, what? What's going on? I was just getting started. I know, Brandon, almost finished. So I have some announcements before we get started. And then I actually created a template that I'm going to share with the class in the chat box when we start talking about that Unit 7 assignment. So I'll try and make sure that everyone can see it, and I'll share my screen and I'll upload it to the discussion board as well. So feel free to use the template that I provide. I just created it about 30 minutes ago, and you don't have to use it, but it's a good template for you to refer to, right? Hi, Johanna, how are you? Doing good. We made it halfway through the week, so that's always promising. How did anybody watch the Super Bowl? That's great, Cherie. Glad you're doing great. Hi, Trinity. Oh my goodness, Emily. I have a dentist appointment tomorrow too, but not a root canal. So um, make sure that you get plenty to eat today because I don't think you'll be able to eat tomorrow, right? I have a crown. They're installing a crown tomorrow. So that's not fun either, but I'm pretty sure a root canal is a little more invasive, right? Guamahai, how are you? Good evening. Oh, you do? That's great. You know, number 88 from the Eagles. I started watching the game, and then towards the beginning of the fourth quarter, I was like, okay, I think the Eagles are going to win, so I'm going to bed. Oh, I hope you feel better, Johanna. Me too, Brandon. I really like those exciting games like I remember UT had a really good game recently. That was kind of like on the edge of your seats overtime kind of game. So I really don't have a particular game, a football team that I'm rooting for, but I really love a good game where it's just like one after the other and it's just so close. So definitely. Hi, Miranda. Welcome. That's great. I bet, Cherie. Yes, those are my favorite, Brandon. Exactly. Where it's like overtime and overtime and oh my goodness, what happened? And you're yelling and you're it's just one thing, or especially when an underdog wins, right? Or it's just gives them a good, a hell of a game. Oh, he is? It was a really good a set, right? A halftime show. I like some of his music. I haven't heard all his music, but the songs that I've heard and the music, and he's a really good lyricist. So I definitely like his music as well. So that, and it was a really good show. Really, really good show. Oh, I love Samuel Jackson. Really good. So again, welcome everyone. Welcome to Unit 7. We are covering Chapter 7, we are going to talk all about financing of real estate. And that's kind of going to be the focus of our writing assignment, where we have a client and that client needs some education, right? And a lot of our clients do because they're not well versed in the law and they really need to learn, especially when they're going through a process like buying a home or selling a home, or they want to educate themselves in the process, especially if they're a plaintiff or a defendant, any type of litigation. So it's always important that we educate our clients through these client letters and this correspondence. So your task this week will not only be to read Chapter 7 and learn about the different types of financing available and the process. You'll then have to reduce it to writing and be able to articulate it in a way that your average layperson can understand the process and the options. And why is it important to understand your debt to income ratio? Why is it important to make sure that you understand the different types of mortgages available and all that good stuff? Because she is our client and she wants to know and needs to know how the process works and what her options are. So it's really a good unit where we're going to incorporate what we're learning and reading and kind of summarizing that in a client letter. And again, we just wrapped up Unit 6 last week. I'm sorry, yesterday. Last week we covered and started Chapter 6, and we closed out Unit 6 last night, where we basically talked about title examination and the importance of a title exam. And we talked about how we can, if we were a title examiner, where would we search? What records? And as you know, there's so many different options. And of course, because of technology and the internet and a lot of things are available to us online, we have expanded our scope of where we can locate information. So that was always a good thing. And also, you know, what should be included in that title examination report. So that's also important, is reducing it to writing. So not only the process the in-depth process of doing a title examination, but making sure that we reduce it to writing in that examination report. And then, of course, closing it all out with the purpose and the importance of title insurance. So, some of y'all had some great information and feedback, and I didn't want to inundate you with so many scenarios and questions. But again, because there was so much content and we were pretty much solid with that topic, I wanted to make sure that we still covered other content from our chapter 9 readings. So I included a lot more questions and scenarios. And again, they're optional, but because we are such a small class, I don't want to, repeat ourselves with the topic and just, saying the same thing over and over, because again, we pretty much were able to hit the nail on the head with the various types of ways in which we can conduct title examination. So I added those additional um, questions and scenarios, again, just to further enhance. But yeah, and it's great. And I'm glad it did make sense, Celeste, because again, that's the purpose of tying everything together, not only our seminar, but our readings and the discussion board, just kind of bringing it together. Which reminds me too, don't forget, that if you're not able to visit the discussion board on 3 separate days, not to worry. At least try your best to visit the discussion board on one day and post a minimum of 3 comments to try to maximize your points. Some of you did not participate in the Unit 6 discussion, so I did grade your participation. Please review your grades. I think everything's current for the most part. Some of you were still turning in your Unit 5 assignment, which I graded. So please, again, make sure that everything's current and updated. And if you have any questions about my feedback or your grade, again, check my work. I want to make sure that I didn't miss a point here or there. And as you know, I do prorate your late points. So if you did submit your Unit 5 assignment late, I did adjust the points unless it took you an entire week. And then, of course, if you haven't turned in that Unit 5 assignment, you still have until this week, Unit 7, you'll have until the close of Unit 7, which is Tuesday, February 18th, to actually turn in that missing assignment. So if you need assistance, and I believe that was a team assignment. So again, get with your team member, but if you can't get a hold of your team member, then obviously your assignment will be by yourself. So it will no longer be a team assignment. To earn those 10 points, make sure you still complete that activity form, and you're just going to list that you are responsible for everything, since you are submitting this assignment by yourself and not with a team member. But if you don't turn in that team activity form, 10 points will be deducted because the team activity form is worth 10 points. So don't forget to include that. And if you have any questions or need additional resources to create that joint driveway easement document, please reach out to me because again, you only have this last week, Unit 7, to turn that in, and that is worth 100 points. So you want to maximize your points, and don't feel like you can't turn it in because you didn't do it as a team. Some of you did turn in individual assignments, so that's perfectly fine. Obviously, the purpose was to collaborate with the team member, but if that was not possible, still make sure to turn in those two documents and turn them in at the same time so I can grade both of them. They don't have to be in the same document. They can be two separate files, but nonetheless, make sure you turn them in. Okay, so again, everything's up to date from units 1 through 7, or I'm sorry, units 1 through 6. We are starting unit 7 today, and you will have 3 items to complete for a grade in unit 7, which again will be tonight's seminar, a discussion board, and then your next writing assignment. Any questions so far? Hopefully, please let me know if I need to adjust my volume. Uh, make sure everybody can hear me. And this is an announcement that I'm going to post as we get closer to the end of the week and as we get closer to next week. I just wanted to give you a heads up. You can also see that it was modified in our course home. So unfortunately, next week I will be rescheduling our seminar. So instead of having our regular Unit 8 seminar on Wednesday, we're actually going to have it a day in advance because I'm going to be traveling on Wednesday for a conference. So I will not be available during this time. So in place of that, we are going to have it a day in advance. So I'll give you some time to read the slide. And again, I'll remind you about this change. Hi, Jessica, glad you could make it. And hopefully you stay connected. And again, I completely understand if you're not able to attend this new date and time. If you're not able to attend, not to worry, you can complete the alternative assignment. You can download the PowerPoint from our virtual office forum and basically complete the alternative assignment. But unfortunately, it's one or the other. Either you attend the rescheduled seminar on Tuesday, which again will also be the close of Unit 7. So I completely understand if you cannot attend seminar, or you can complete in advance the Unit 8 alternative seminar assignment. Those are your two options. And if you do decide to complete the alternative assignment, you will actually have until the end of Unit 8, which is Tuesday, February 25th, to turn in and upload that alternative assignment. So I do want to share my screen. As you know, when you log in to our seminar tab, here we go. Just want you to see that the date is already changed. So today is the Unit 7 seminar. And as you can see, it has our time in Eastern time zone. And then you'll notice that the department has already granted me permission to change our upcoming Unit 8 seminar from Wednesday the 19th to Tuesday the 18th. So we'll have that seminar on Tuesday the 18th. I'll send a reminder on Monday, or I'll post it on Tuesday morning just to give you a heads up. And again, if you cannot attend, do not worry. you can complete the alternative assignment. And then you'll see that for Unit 9 and Unit 10, we go back to our regularly scheduled seminars to be held on Wednesdays. So again, I am so sorry for the inconvenience. I tried to reschedule and change my own schedule, but I couldn't. So I apologize for that. And please feel free to complete the alternative assignment. So if you already know ahead of time that you're not going to be able to make a Tuesday seminar, you just click on discussions. Just want to show you again where you can locate the PowerPoint and click on virtual office and scroll down to Unit 8 and you can actually already download the PowerPoint. I can also include it here. I'll include it in the chat just for convenience. I want to make sure that everyone is able to download it and you can start working on it, or you have until the following Tuesday, which is the 25th, to start working on it. So, and I'll send reminders just in case. Great. Okay. So if you were wondering if when you logged in and you were looking at why is there a different date, that's why there's a different date. And I'll also post an announcement reminder again about it. So like I said, in Unit 7, we are covering Chapter 7, and we're talking about appraisals, where basically our chapter or our book, our digital book, follows the transactions, and it follows, for the most part, the sequential order of when you're buying or selling a home. So we're talking about financing now. We talked about contracts. We talk about how you might enter into a contract with a real estate agent, whether to buy or sell a home, where the laws of agency and agency law basically will help uh, determine your relationship as far as fiduciary duty when it comes to a seller and a buyer with a buyer agent. So we talked about contract law and we talked about ownership rights and the importance of a survey and a land description. And then, of course, encumbrances, easements, covenants, licenses. And now we're getting to the second half of our course, which is now talking about financing, leases, and closing, and what happens basically in Unit 10 towards the end of our course. We'll talk about closing and the closing event and the closing documents that you'll need and why this closing event is so important. And then, of course, what happens after closing, because like I mentioned last week, there's much more that happens behind the scenes after you close, but we really don't see that unless you work behind the scenes in making sure that you're recording the deed and all that good stuff and making sure that funding has occurred for everyone. So like I said, there's 3 items to complete for a grade. Don't forget you have the discussion board and an assignment. And then of course, I'll grade tonight's discussion board after, I'm sorry, tonight's seminar after our seminar ends. So let's take a look at this week's discussion board. It's a really good discussion board. I've already posted some additional questions, and I just wanted to share some information. And it's about basically regulating mortgage lending. So as you begin reading Chapter 7, you'll find out there's various federal laws and administrative regulations that are basically designed and created uh, for the sole purpose of regulating real property financing, which is important because not all property is inherited or gifted or a cash deal. If you don't inherit a property, or um, if you're not gifted a property, or if you don't pay a cash deal up front, chances are a majority of people do finance. They seek financing to purchase real estate. So in our digital book, there's a section that is titled Regulation of Home Mortgage Lending. I do have my digital book up, and I just wanted to share that as well to make sure that everyone can locate the section. And then I'll share my screen. Here we go. So it's at page 210 of our digital book. And there's a short section that talks about regulation of home mortgage lending. So you'll read that section starting on 210, and it will talk about the Truth in Lending Act, and basically talks about the various types of laws that exist to help regulate these transactions. So from 210, here's an example, a loan estimate. And it runs all the way, you'll read up until page 217. You're even given a case and an advertising section and the Consumer Protection Act, the Dodd-Frank, and that's where it closes out. So that's our reading. So in addition to reading this information, you are to, here we go, find an article. So you'll conduct your own research after reading that section of regulation of home mortgage lending. You are to locate an article that illustrates one of these regulations. So any of those laws that we skim through, you can find an article, and this article should discuss that particular regulation that you selected and how it impacts a real estate transaction. You are required to pay particular attention to the regulation's role in protecting you as a consumer and basically overall ensuring fair lending practices. So after you read that section in our digital book in chapter 7 and find an article, you are to answer the following 3 questions based on your findings. Number 1, which regulation was most prominently featured in your particular article that you found, and what impact did the regulation play in the transaction? Number 2, how did the regulation affect the behavior of the lenders and or the decisions made by the borrowers? And number 3, what were your key takeaways from the article in terms of compliance and consumer protection? So again, as you know, this is basically all a result of the article you find. So again, try to find an article. Since we are such a small class, let's not repeat any articles. So if you see that a classmate has already found an article and perhaps you maybe wanted that same article, find another article or select another regulation. So as you can see, the section that you're required to read starting on page 210 has a lot of different regulations. So you do have a lot of options. And again, because we're such a small class, we should try our best not to duplicate an article. So you could find an article about the Truth in Lending Act, or an article on the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974, or the Settlement Procedures Act of 1974, or the HPA, the Homeowners Protection Act, or the homeowners. And I'm actually going to add this to the chat, just so there is a little summary here that shows you of all the different regulations that you can choose from. Here we go. So there's quite a few. So you do have options. So if you feel like you didn't find anything on the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974, then move on to the Truth in Lending Act or the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act or the Community Reinvestment Act. Here we go. And I'm just adding this. Here we go. So it's in the chat. Hi, Sal. Glad you could make it. Welcome. And stay safe. Yeah, there's some weather coming down, trickling down over here too. I think it's going to start raining again here in San Antonio tomorrow. No snow, luckily, but we're going to get some weather. Thursday and Friday. So everyone stay safe. And again, glad you could make it. So that's a discussion board. Uh, and again, feel free to, you do have free range in the sense of finding any article and choosing any of those regulations that were mentioned in Chapter 7. I do realize we are at the start of Unit 7, so you may have not started reading the chapter. So again, take your time. If you still have an opportunity to actually participate in the discussion board, um, answer one of those additional questions. Don't feel like, oh, well, I haven't really researched anything and I can't post. You can definitely start responding some of those additional questions so you won't lose a day and you won't lose a post. And if you don't have time to do your research until Saturday, then wait until Saturday to answer the discussion board question. But at a minimum, try your best to start posting some of those responses. Great. So let's take a look at the client letter. Like I mentioned in the past, I think it was so in Unit 5 we did that easement. So we used a template, and in Unit 3 we created a memo. So now we're actually creating a different type of writing document, and the document we're creating is a client letter. So here is our scenario. Amos Calvin, which is a new associate attorney at the law firm, has asked you to sit in on an interview with a new client by the name of Mariah Johnson. Miss Johnson has recently inherited a large sum of money and would like to purchase her very first home. However, since this will be Mariah's first real estate purchase, she is confused about the role that debt can play in financing the purchase of real estate. So she is not well versed or educated in this area because this is going to be her first time purchaser, right? Following the interview with Mariah, Amos tasked you with preparing a client letter explaining to Mariah three different types of mortgage payments commonly utilized today in the real estate industry. Amos has tasked you with preparing at least a 2-page, single-spaced client letter addressed to Mariah that analyzes and explains the role that debt will play in financing her very first home. Within your letter, here we go. So within your letter, you are to define and explain how fixed rate, adjustable rate, and interest-only mortgages will work. You are to analyze the pros and cons of fixed rate mortgages, focusing on the stability of fixed monthly payments and the impact the loan term can have on interest rates and overall costs. Within your discussion of adjustable rate mortgages, you need to analyze the potential benefits of initially lower interest rates and the risks associated with future rate adjustments, including the possibility of an increased payment, right? We know that what happened several years ago with the real estate bubble, right? And finally, in your discussion of interest-only mortgages, you are to analyze the short-term benefits of lower initial payments and the long-term considerations, including the implications of the balloon payments at maturity. So again, a lot of information in here. And again, here are just some background information too. You are to draft at least a 2-page single-space client letter discussing the following issues. And again, those are the following issues. I am going to add in the chat box. Like I said earlier, I was working right before the start of our seminar. I was actually working on a template, and I shared it in the chat box, and I'm actually going to share it in my screen. It is an APA format, so you do have a cover page and you do have a reference page. Again, you're not required to use this template. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is going to follow, and I'll also share the grading rubric. So let me just pull up the grading rubric before I forget, because we want to make sure that we're including everything that is being asked. And sometimes it could be overwhelming when we're looking at all this information. So I just wanted to break it down for you um, just to help you. Yes, Johanna, that's a really good point. Sometimes we get confused between a memo and a business letter or a client letter, and this particular one has a salutation because it is a letter as opposed to a memo. In a memo, you already have the two in the memo format, which is that heading where you have the to, from, date, and the subject matter in that memo heading. As opposed to a business letter, you're going to have and here is, let me make sure I'm sharing this here. Yes, I am. So here, because this is a business letter, we did use the name of the law firm in, I believe it was in Unit 2. In the Unit 2 writing assignment, we were given the name of a law firm, and the name was Weir and Associates, LLP. I made up this address, so you could basically make up an address in your jurisdiction. So anything in red is something that I've made up because, as you noticed, the assignment instructions did not give the name of the law firm or the address of our client or of the law firm. All it mentions is that our supervising attorney has asked us to sit in on a client interview and or a client consultation, and has asked us then to draft this business letter. Okay, so again, it does start. The template that I provided does start with title page. Again, it's just a basic title page with the title of our assignment and our course, as well as your name. I just put a fictitious name here and then today's date. And then because this is a business letter, it should be theoretically on a business letterhead. So we've created our own business letterhead here. You'll insert the date that you draft your letter. Because Mariah Johnson is the name of our client, we were not given an address. So you can make up the address to fit your jurisdiction. And then you can add the subject line here, whatever you want your subject line to be, which is basically summarizing your letter. And then here is the salutation you were asking about, Johanna. Dear Mariah Johnson or Miss Johnson, whatever, however you want to address her. I would address her by first and last name or last name because this is a business letter. So you'll start with a short introduction, and like the instructions do state, that the business letter should be single space, which is already set in this format, and you should have one skip line between paragraphs, which is double spacing. So as you can see from the paragraph settings, this is set to single spacing. You just highlight the paragraph settings. Here is a line spacing, and then you'll skip one line between sections. So in your introduction, you're just going to introduce the purpose of this letter to Mariah. Then the next part of your letter is going to be to discuss the 3 different types of mortgage payments that are commonly utilized. That was one of the first things the instructions had asked. And then the role that debt plays in financing. And this is something that Chapter 7 does discuss. So you are not required to do any outside research other than your Chapter 7. However, you can if you want to. And if you do include any other outside research, make sure to cite your source. So the next section will talk about the role that debt plays in financing. And then these are the 3 types of mortgages that you were asked to discuss, as well as what you should discuss about each one. For example, our instructions did mention that when you discuss fixed rate mortgages, you are specifically to discuss, analyze the pros and cons of a fixed rate mortgage. You are to focus on the stability of fixed monthly payments and the impact the loan term can have on interest rates and the overall cost. For the adjustable rate mortgage section, you're going to analyze the potential benefits of initially lower payment interest rates and the risks associated with future rate adjustments. And then, of course, include the possibility of increased payments. You're not sure if you're going to get the increased payments, but the possibility is there. And then the last one will be discussing interest-only mortgages and talk about short-term benefits of lower initial payments and the long-term considerations, again, including the implications of the balloon payment at maturity. And then, of course, you're going to have a short conclusion just summarizing your letter. And then, of course, should she have any additional information or questions, to please reach out to you or to the attorney. And then, because again, this is a business letter, you are to include a closing after your conclusion, and then insert your name, and very important, your title, and then, of course, the name of the law firm. You don't have to use this name of this law firm, but it was mentioned in our Unit 2 assignment. So just for conformity, for consistency, you can use this, but then just use any address with your jurisdiction. So again, all this information for this letter can be found in Chapter 7. So after you finish drafting your letter, you'll notice that there is a reference page, and you are to include your book as a reference. And if you use any outside sources, you are to include them here in this reference page. Again, you're not required to use any additional sources. I don't think that the instructions gave a page count. Let me just double check that in the instructions. No, it just mentions that it should be at least 2 pages single spaced. So at a minimum, your content should be 2 pages, excluding your cover page and your reference page, which I don't see a problem with you having 2 pages, because again, there's so much information that you can include in those 3 mortgages, not to mention the important role that your debt to income ratio plays in financing. And then, of course, that initial discussion of the types of mortgages and a brief introduction and conclusion. So you shouldn't have any problems reaching that 2-page minimum. So some of you have questions. I'm going to give me some time to read the chat. Sheree, you mentioned you feel like doing pre-law school, you have to learn how to write. Yes, yeah, definitely. We're incorporating a lot of writing, because if you do plan on attending law school, there's a lot of reading and writing, right? So definitely, this profession has a lot of writing, and also depending on what type of discipline you want to go into when you start practicing law, if it's more transactional work or more litigation. So your options are endless, but definitely going to incorporate a lot of communication, a lot of different types of writing tools, whether it's an appellate brief, a memorandum of points of authority, or a persuasive document, or an informative piece of literature, such as this letter, right? So you also have to make sure you remember who your audience is, especially when you're incorporating legal jargon. As we know, Mariah is our client, and Mariah is not well versed in legal terminology and or the process. So you want to make sure to not use too much legal jargon, but if you do, make sure you explain it, right? Oh, you love legal writing, but not APA. So, and I want to keep it really simple. So for this purpose, my APA for this assignment is just to make sure you do have that title page and that reference page, and to cite your sources, right? There you go, Mel. That definitely comes in handy. Miranda, yes. Please incorporate in-text citation, especially if you're paraphrasing a section or a portion. So yes, thank you for reminding me about that, because APA format does require or encourage best practices would be those in-text citations. Definitely. Yes, definitely too. Oh, Miranda, that was your question. Hopefully I answered your question, Miranda. Yes, Mel, legal research and writing class is also very essential. I completely agree. So if you haven't taken legal research and writing, I know it'll be offered next term. You're welcome, Miranda. I want to make sure that I'm not missing any other questions. We go. Okay, good. So again, you're not required to use this template. This is a template that I just created a few minutes before class. Again, I just wanted to make sure that we're covering all the information. I do want to share the grading rubric. So let me just share my screen to make sure that you can see what exactly your grade will consist of. Again, going forward right before you start working on that assignment, it's good to know that you're covering. So you can always refer back to this. And it's the same format, the 60-20-20 percentages and points. So 60 points is allocated to the content, and it's broken down into three main bullet points. Again, the focus will be on the role of debt in real estate finance, basically explaining, defining how fixed rate mortgages work, how adjustable rate mortgages work, and how interest only mortgages work, and making sure you're covering that information. And like I said, everything is pretty much in our chapter 7 readings as well as in tonight's PowerPoint. So you can definitely look at that too and use that as a template for your client business letter. And then 20 points is allocated to the format and organization. So keep in mind, if you lose points, if you do not use the proper format, let's say you forget the salutation or the closing, or you double space your entire paper, this is where you're going to lose points, especially when you're double spacing the entire paper. You're not meeting technically the 2-page minimum, so you don't have sufficient content, so you'll also lose points there as well. So again, make sure that your paragraph settings are correct. And then 20 points, 20% is allocated to writing, and you can see what consists of that writing portion, which would be making sure that it's clearly written in standard English. Make sure that you check for grammar, for spelling, punctuation, and make sure you're citing your sources. Any questions? Let me go back to our PowerPoint. Here we go. And of course, as you start working on this assignment and you might have some questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions via email, text, and or phone call. Great. All right. So let's take a look. And again, this information will also come in handy, the PowerPoint in your client letter to Mariah. So property appraisals, one of the things that Chapter 7 talks about is the importance of an appraisal, because you'd be surprised that there's often a skew or a discrepancy between the fair market value, or where do we derive that figure. We might have like a market analysis of comparables that your real estate agent might do. Then we might also look at what the appraisal has valued your home at. And of course, that's just an appraisal figure from the appraisal district to help the taxing governing body on how to tax you. You can always protest that value, where you may argue that the value should be less, especially if you plan on living there and not necessarily selling the home. You as a homeowner may actually want to protest the value, because if you have a hearing and protest the value with the appraisal district, they may be able to lower the amount, which again can also lower your taxes. So you do see a lot of motivated homeowners who file their protest. There's just a document, a form you have to fill out, letting the appraisal district that you're protesting the value. So they do send you a notice of letting you know what the upcoming year is going to be valued at in the upcoming year, tax year. That your property is going to be valued at. And sometimes this is where you might show them pictures of, the inside of your home, or of the deterioration of the roof, or things like that, that can bring down the value of your home. And again, that's only if you're going to protest. But if you plan on selling your home in the coming year, you may not want to protest the value the appraisal district has given you. And you might just keep it at that, or maybe argue that it should be valued a lot higher because you plan on selling the home. So there's different ways in which we can appraise the value of your home, whether having an appraiser come out, because that's something that if you're financing your home, the bank is also going to want to do, because they want to make sure that the loan amount you're seeking is comparable with the value of the home. So we'll also look at what the fair market value is, or what the market value is. the seller and the buyer can actually set aside that value and agree on a value or purchase price that the buyer is willing to pay and the seller is willing to sell. So that can also be something different. Other influencing factors that can influence the value of your property could be the demand, right? You've heard the phrase, well, it's a seller's market or it's a buyer's market. So supply and demand and the scarcity of the property can also drive up the prices or lower the prices. So if there's a lot of homes that are for sale, so it might necessarily be a buyer's market and not a seller's market because again, the 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 current market is saturated with a lot of homes. So that's something that you want to look. So one of the things your real estate agent, if you do enter into a contract with a real estate agent, whether you're a buyer or seller, they're going to let you know what the market is right now, and they might give you some advice based on their expert opinion because of their profession. They might tell you, well, let's hold off on selling or let's hold off on buying. There's certain trends that they follow, and it's a great way to educate the consumer, again, whether you're a buyer or seller, on is this a good time to buy or is this a good time to put your house on the market. And they might tell you, well, you know what? Right now, the market is saturated with so many homes. Even though your home may be valued at 350, the comparables here have kind of driven the price down because they've been selling the same home or similar home for 280. Again, because there might have been a motivated seller, or there's just so many homes that it kind of drove the price down. So again, those are things you want to take into consideration if you are buying or selling, right? So it just depends. Are you thinking about buying in the next 3 to 6 months, or are you thinking of buying by the end of the year? Well, let's start looking at the market now, and let's start looking at, you know, what you need to do to make sure to get pre-qualified or pre-approved, right? Sometimes you have more purchasing power when you've already been pre-approved, and there's a big difference between a pre-qual or a pre-approval. And of course, people pay attention to somebody who's already gone through the whole process for the most part and have been pre-approved for a certain amount and is now just looking for the right home. So something that our book also talks about is the three different types of approaches to appraising property. And again, it just depends on what approach you're going by, or this is where you might have those different values. You have the market approach, you have the cost approach, and then you have the income approach. And this is something too that your real estate agent will educate you on, because we might think automatically, well, this is what, I'm paying taxes on 350. You're telling me that we're going to put the house on the market for 280. How? Like, how is that possible? So then we have to do that comparison and show you, well, there's an appraisal method, and there might be a method that looks at not only the cost of the land, but also how much did it cost to construct the property, and then what's the depreciation. So there's a lot of different variables to consider in all these approaches. And then, of course, income approach, you can also purchase property when you're thinking about investing property. So there's investment property as well. Let's say I've had my home for 20 years. I'm about to pay off my home. Now I want to look at some investment property, perhaps maybe in another city, and I want to convert it into rental property. So you might look at that as well. Johanna, you mentioned your question is, do you believe the current home prices will be the new equilibrium? The prices are just way too high, especially in the economy where, yeah, that's a good point. What also affects the value of the home is what's going on in the economy, right? Are we in an inflation? Is everything, the cost of eggs, the cost of milk, the cost of rental prices, the cost of vehicles? So yeah, everything's slowly increasing, and that could be the new average, right? And this is where we also look at the square footage and what's the price. So even which also a contributing factor is how we value or how we reevaluate the cost of living. So even though, the cost of living might increase for certain benefits, let's say Social Security benefits or VA benefits, or so does everything else increases. So you're not necessarily getting an increase, in certain with the cost of living adjustment, because everything's kind of going up. So it kind of stays the same, but now we're just talking about a different numbers, right? So that you have to look at those extrinsic factors when taking a look at the market, definitely. It is, Suzanne, especially when you have an escrow, and they do that escrow analysis every year. My homeowner's insurance went up, and I don't understand why, but one of the things when I started shopping around, they said it's just gone up everywhere. So it went from $1,200 a year to $2,300, and the sudden increase. So it's going to definitely affect my mortgage payment because it's escrowed. So when they do that escrow analysis, they realize, wow, it jumped up a lot. And then if you pay taxes and the value of your home went up too, so you could see how your mortgage payment went from $1,300 a month to $1,600 a month or $1,700 a month, because now they have to offset for what they paid out in taxes, and they have to make sure they have enough in escrow to pay the taxes for the following year on the projection of the new increase and their homeowner's insurance. So this is why more and more people are choosing to sell their home and to rent, because again, these increases of your taxes on your home as well as your insurance is increasing. So they do that cost benefit analysis and that pros and cons. And then if you have an HOA, you live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, that's also increased more likely. So now you have to add that to your monthly expenses. So yeah, and a lot of mortgages are escrowed because they want to make sure that you don't default in taxes, and that the property that you're using as collateral is insured. So yeah, it's crazy, right? So again, here's just some more information on mortgages. Who are the key parties? You have the mortgagor and the mortgagee. And then, of course, what is a mortgage? And that is a contract. It's a real estate security agreement. The security will be the collateral that is the real estate. So the borrower retains equitable title, right, and gives a lien to the lender, being the mortgagee. So again, I do realize that you haven't read Chapter 7 yet because we just started Unit 7 this week or today. So this should look familiar when you start reading the Chapter 7 and working on your business letter to your client. So this is just a summary of the mortgage process. For the most part, you may want to, even before you start the loan application and start applying, you want to kind of get your affairs in order, where you want to make sure, well, what is my credit score, right? Let me look at my credit score. There's a lot of companies where you can subscribe, or you can obtain your free credit report depending on the agency. We have 3 different credit bureaus, but it's really important that you understand where you're at, what your credit score is with all 3 credit bureaus, and that you understand if there's any discrepancies, maybe your address isn't updated or your employer. You want to make sure that all 3 are consistent with regards to your personal information, and that everything's being reported correctly. And it's always good practice, right, to kind of spot check this, and make sure that there's something, that there isn't an account that doesn't belong to you that's not reported or is reporting. So you want to make sure that everything in your credit report from all 3 credit bureaus are reporting accurately, correctly. This is also a great opportunity to dispute anything, whether it's a late payment or an account is closed, already paid off, and it's still showing as open with the balance. So things like that, it's a great opportunity to correct. So even 6 months before you even start an application, you want to make sure that you go in knowing your credit standing and your credit worthiness, your worthiness and your credit score. The last thing you want to do is start an application and have no clue, because oftentimes the lender will start, do you know what your credit score is, ballpark or what, so you at least be educated, knowing where you stand, and making sure that everything is current and updated, right? And then once you've taken care if there was anything, any discrepancies or anything you needed to fix, or anything that maybe you needed to pay down some balances, because your debt to income ratio wasn't really where you wanted it to be. So you can work on reducing that debt to income ratio, because again, you want to look at what your lender requires, especially including your mortgage payment. So they want to make sure, you're at 30 or 40% depending on your lender. And then you go to your loan application, you do that loan application. They might do a soft inquiry, they might do a hard inquiry, but this is where you want to make sure that you also understand and educate yourself on what's the current interest rate. Maybe it's not a good time to purchase a home because the interest rates are a little high right now. And then, of course, depending on your credit score, it'll determine, will you qualify for a conventional loan or an FHA loan, or are you going to utilize your benefits like if you're a veteran? If you're a veteran and you don't have a VA loan right now, you can then do the proper documentation, obtain the documentation to have and start that VA loan process. So again, a lot of information and a lot of things that happen even before you start looking for a home if you are a potential buyer, right? Especially if it's your first time purchasing a home. Johanna, you mentioned I thought that once you paid their house, there would be no more property tax, but my parents still. Oh, no, no, you still pay property taxes, even though your home has been paid off. You'll always. So let's say, for example, you inherit a home, or you pay off your loan. Taxes are forever, right? You know the saying, "Death and taxes are the only the only sure things in life that you'll always continue paying, and taxes is definitely one of them. Suzanne, you mentioned that you were lucky your real estate agent was your mom. Yeah, that's great. That is definitely a great an added bonus. And and the lender, yeah, and that's good. That's good to know too. If you have a family or a member or a friend that's a real estate agent, because they have their connections, right? Their connections from an electrician to a plumber to a contractor to a lender, all that good stuff. They have a Rolodex of networking that they've had throughout the years. And it's always good to know, well, who's going to really hustle and want your business as a lender. And you'd be surprised, they'll send out your file to, all these different people, and they know your options, and they might think, well, you know what, wait, work on building your credit. Maybe, continue, come back in 6 months when you have 6 months of good payment history, and make sure that, all your credit cards are less than 20%, or try to pay them off kind of thing, but you still want to show that you're making monthly payments and you can make payments. So there's things like that they might advise you. And there's a lot of great resources nowadays on how to increase your credit score, in a matter of months, or a month. So you can always look at that too, or you can always buy points. So you do have options. And I know we're running out of time, but again, a lot of great information. I'll continue to add these questions and scenarios in our discussion board. So all is not lost. We'll continue the conversation in our discussion board. Everyone, have a good evening, and I'll see you in our discussion board. And enjoy. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone, right? And enjoy your weekend. Good night. Take care, Mel. Celeste, good night. Bye, Suzanne. Take care, Brandon. Bye, Johanna. Good night, Christina. Take care, Cherie. Bye, Emily. Good night, Miranda. Take care. Good night, class.